Here today with Nathan Harper. He is the preserve archaeologist with the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and he's working at Spring Preserve. Today he's going to talk about the importance of recognizing who came before us, how they communicated with the land, and what it means for us to make sure that our generations have a fruitful life here in Las Vegas.
Hi, I'm Nathan Harper, archaeologist for the Southern Nevada Water Authority at the Springs Preserve. I'm very happy to be here today to join Isaiah for this podcast.
It's good to have you in. So archaeologist / anthropologist over there at the Spring Preserve.
Yes.
How long have you been over there for?
So in May, for me, it's going to be 15 years that I've served as the preserve archaeologist there. And recently I've been reassigned back over to the Southern Nevada Water Authority. But Springs Preserve is still part of my responsibility. So I help take care of the cultural resources there at the Springs and then throughout Southern Nevada for the Southern Nevada Water Authority.
And taking care of the cultural resources, does that mean that there's active dig sites out there at the Spring Preserve that you're working with? And
yeah, so at the Springs Preserve, we have several archaeological sites. We have prehistoric archaeological sites. That is, sites that were sort of built and left by the indigenous people here, the Southern Paiute people, or the Nuuvi is the name they have for themselves. So at the Springs Preserve, we do have remains of a Native American village there. We have pit houses that we partially excavated. We use things like, we use science like ground penetrating radar to see those things underneath the ground. And then we could go in with targeted excavations and find the things that are important, leave the rest in the ground, because part of archaeology is once you dig something up, it's gone forever. That's why you see archaeologists are sort of, you see them with small little brushes or picks, removing that soil and that dirt very carefully, because once you remove that stuff, it's gone forever. So we want to make sure that we're very careful when we do that work on archaeological sites, especially at some place like the Springs, which is a special place. So we have prehistoric Native American archaeological sites. We also have early settler archaeological sites dating about to the 1870s, 1880s there at the Springs Preserve that have been partially excavated. And then, of course, we have all the water procurement facilities there dating to the 20s, 30s, and 40s that are sort of a testament to the modern age of Las Vegas. So there's very few places where you can go where you have the entire extent of the history of a place. And the Springs Preserve is one of those places where we have evidence of people being there over 9,000 years ago till the modern day, people still working, living, and doing things there at the Springs Preserve.
And that's kind of interesting. I never really understood that about archaeology, that you kind of want to leave stuff there. So you know something's there, you can do the radar. Is it showing what's down there? Are you able to see, what artifacts are there? And then how is that shared with the rest of the community?
Right. So when you're using ground penetrating radar or other sort of remote sensing type activities or science, use other sort of remote sensing technologies there. The resolution isn't quite to the artifact level. You can see large features, so you can get an idea of whether or not there's a 9 or 10 foot size pit house, and that is indigenous house that's in the ground, or storage pits or other things. So you get a broad idea of what's there, and then you can target your excavation specific to parts of that. One of the reasons we leave the stuff behind, because obviously you can't put it all back. You can't put the soil back. You can't put the artifacts back exactly as they were. So you want to record those things meticulously. Then you want to leave a portion, because in the future, maybe somebody will have a technology like ground penetrating radar. We will be able to find those artifacts in the ground. And maybe someday we won't even have to dig these things up anymore.
Yeah, I guess the hope, right? Because archaeology is not necessarily about where we've been, but where we're going to go, right? And so looking at that perspective, can we leave these in there kind of even in a more preserved state without having to disturb it? Yeah.
Well, as an archaeologist, my sort of approach to the present is to kind of look at it through the lens of the past. What lessons did we learn in the past, and how can we apply those lessons to today? And particularly when we're talking about Southern Nevada, the Southern Paiute people, the Nuuvi, they've been here for time immemorial. They've lived, survived, and thrived in this environment. Who better to learn from how to live, thrive, and survive in Southern Nevada than the people that have been here for thousands of years?
And they were, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they were basically snowbirds, right? They were down here in the valley during the wintertime and then went up to the mountains during the summer.
They practiced what we call seasonal rounds. And there's one of the idea of what we call a double loop subsistence strategy. For part of the year, they would have moved between sites in the valley, different spring sites in the valley. And then in the summer months when it was super hot, they'd go up to the mountains and do big game hunting. At the end of the summer, they would harvest things like pine nuts, then come back down into the valley and harvest mesquite and agaves and other foods that they've grown in their gardens throughout the year.
Hmm. And so going back to learning from them and kind of the way that they adapted to the climate or adapted to the needs that they had as a community, what are some things that you're seeing that translate from what they were doing here within the Las Vegas Valley, and now that you see maybe the early settlers in the mid 1800s and up into the 1900s and even to now? What are you seeing that has kind of been a common thread throughout those communities?
Well, when you look in the past, particularly with the indigenous tribes, the Nuuvi that were here, they were not very big. They were pretty limited by the resources that were available to them. And through into the early settler period here, the population wasn't very big. You were definitely going to be dependent upon your neighbors, your friends and neighbors. Even if you weren't friends with your neighbors, you were still going to have to depend on them. Resources were scarce. Resources would have to have been shared. And I think one of the really important sort of concepts that the Nuuvi, the Southern Paiute people have is you leave something behind. You don't gather everything. You don't take everything from a resource. You leave something behind for people that might come behind you or for the next year. And so being conscious of your resource use, being careful with your resource use, understanding that you're not the only person tapping into that resource, and that resource is something that's going to be used by the community, is very important.
And so something you said, maybe at the Paiute, when the Paiutes were here, or I'm sorry, the Paiute, what's the other name that they call themselves?
Nuuvi.
Nuuvi,
Mm-hmm.
the Nuuvi people. Are you seeing some of that in the archaeological digs that you find that they were people that they weren't necessarily friendly with, but that they had to share with?
Traditionally, the people here in southern Nevada didn't always get along with people that were down along the Colorado River. Those tribes didn't always necessarily get along. But,
and that's not too far away.
No, it's not too far away.
Wow.
But they did share resource areas. There were areas where these groups would have overlapped, and they would have had to come to some sort of agreement on how they were going to treat those resources and how they were going to interact if they happened to find each other in those places. The one of the things that we think about when we think about these seasonal rounds is you're going from place to place. You're following the seasons. You're following the resource. A certain animal may be at one spring at a certain time of the year. A certain plant may become ripe at another spring at a different time of the year. So you would have been following what the land was telling you. And you would have been in constant conversation with the land as a Nuuvi. You would have been speaking to the land is speaking to you. One of the main concepts we see there is the land provides for everybody. The land is here to take care of us as long as we take care of the land. And that's a really important concept that we talk about in a new space that we've built there at the Springs Preserve called the New Upasats. That means the People's Garden, the Southern Paiute Garden, where we're working with Southern Paiute elders to name those plants in Nuuvi language, name the animals in Nuuvi language, and then help people here in Southern Nevada understand those concepts about working with the landscape and the land taking care of you and you taking care of the land. So we're very happy about that garden and looking to open that sometime in the fall.
How did they say that the land communicated back to them? Was it through weather patterns? Was it through the way that maybe migration patterns from the animals or just plant life?
I think one of the concepts that's also important is the land is alive. It's not a static thing. The land is living. It's breathing. When you see the clouds come over Mount Charleston, that's the mountain breathing. When you see the water come down into the springs that flow underneath the ground, that's the blood of the earth that is flowing from the mountains up into the springs. And so you communicate with these things. You announce yourself. You say, I'm here. We're here for good. Maybe you leave an offering, but you announce yourself and say that you're there with respect for that resource. Which is, it's something to be mindful when you go into the wilderness and you go into the natural world. The concept of leave no trace, leave only footprints, take only photos, right? And that's something that we try to teach at the Springs Preserve, that ethos of conservation and teaching people how to live in the Mojave Desert, because it is a harsh desert, but there are lessons that can be learned from people that have come before us.
Yeah, right. Nature is so powerful, and you see nature just wipe out, whole populations and just almost cover up any of their existence previously, right? The world's been here for a long time. It's going to be here for longer than we are. And so kind of looking back at how the Southern Paiute nations kind of dealt with that and treated that, from what I'm understanding, you're saying, like, as where we are right now, we've got to recognize, hey, we've got limited resources, and we've got to make sure that we're thinking about the future, thinking about how to provide for for a sustainable Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm. 7 generations. You think 7 generations into the future. What's going to happen 7
Mm-hmm.
generations from now? What's going to happen to our water? What's going to happen to our land? What's going to happen to our air within 7 generations? And so that's another sort of concept that you find a lot in indigenous groups, thinking about those future generations. One of the important things about the Springs Preserve is it's always been a gathering place. Because of the springs, because of the water, you know, it was called the Las Vegas Springs, but another name for it was Big Springs, just because it was the largest complex of springs here in the Las Vegas Valley. So it would have been an oasis. As travelers would have come from Santa Fe going to the California coast, as people would have come from Salt Lake City to San Bernardino, they would have seen this oasis in the center of the Las Vegas Valley. They would have seen the large trees, the large cottonwoods. They would have seen the greenery and the mesquites there. And so the Springs Preserve, the Springs itself, has always been a gathering place for groups of people. Going back to prehistory, through the early settlers, they used to escape the heat of the city of Las Vegas, the town of Las Vegas, by going and camping out next to the creek. It's much cooler under the cottonwoods, much cooler next to the creek there. And still today, you see the Springs as a gathering place. It is a place for people from Las Vegas, from Southern Nevada, to come, to understand the Mojave Desert, to understand the plants and animals that live here, to understand how we fit into that, but also to provide that conservation messaging that we have to work together to be able to make this place work.
So, other than the prehistoric or the Southern Paiute Nation, right? I believe it was the Mormon settlers that came down and kind of built a fort for that exact reason, right? Like you're talking about, like just the traveling from Salt Lake down to San Bernardino or wherever. Here's water, right?
Yeah.
Let's stop and get water. But then after them, you have kind of the railroad come in, right? In looking at those two, and maybe even the third, where they actually start to settle here in Las Vegas, looking at it from a anthropologic perspective, right? How do you see that those three kind of settlers did with regards to respecting or having that communication with the land to then recognize that they're looking to the future, not necessarily just in the present?
Right. The Southern Paiute were here. The Nuuvi people were here when the Old Mormon Fort was established in the 1850s. And they came primarily because of the water, because it was a sort of a stopping, resting place along the way, along the trail there. But they also wanted to establish farms there to see if it could be a viable community. As Brigham Young when he sent the missionaries down here to Las Vegas, they wanted to increase the honey for the hive, for the church. And, you know, once again, relationships weren't always the best because concepts of ownership weren't necessarily the same. Once again, if you're talking about the indigenous folks that were here, the land provides for everybody. Everything is for everybody. Everybody shares everything, as opposed to the idea that the missionaries came here like, these are our fields. We put fences around them. They're bound here. Everything inside is ours, and nobody else gets to come in. So there were some conflicts between the Mormon missionaries and the indigenous folks that were here. There were some conflicts between the settlers and the indigenous folks that were here. Octavius Decatur Gass, you see his name on Gass Peak, is the tallest mountain in the Las Vegas Range. You see Gass Street. You see Decatur Boulevard. All of those are named after Octavius Decatur Gass, who settled at the fort in the 1860s. It was the same sort of thing. You had to depend upon your neighbors at that time. It was the post office. It was the way station for people traveling between the interior of the United States and the coast. The main reason the railroad ended up here is because of the springs, because of the water. They needed that water for their locomotives. They needed that water for the steam trains to keep them running. And this was the largest major source of water between Utah and California. So it was the logical place for shops to be built and for Las Vegas essentially to become a railroad town. And Las Vegas was a railroad town before it was anything else.
Yeah, and that water provided that outlet, right? And I mean, without that water, there would have been no reason to have even had the railroad come through here, or maybe trying to divert it through maybe closer to the Colorado, if that would have even been possible. And so, kind of then maybe jumping forward to like where we are now, right? Where we've been lucky to have a lot of people moving into Las Vegas recently, right? And you see that huge influx, and the reason, like why, what is bringing people here, whether or not it's low taxes, whether or not it's the entertainment industry or the sports industry. But as an anthropologist, do you see any ties to where, the Southern Paiute, the Mormon settlers, the railroad, what brought them here and what are bringing people here now?
I think it always comes back to opportunity, right? Las Vegas, there's an incredible number of opportunities for people to make their stake, to make their claim here in Las Vegas, and it's been that way going back into prehistory. Because of the resources they hear, because of the unique situation that Las Vegas and Nevada brings, it's an incredibly enticing place for people to come and remake themselves or make themselves. So it definitely is something that you see throughout the history of this place. People taking a risk, people taking a chance to be here. And then learning about this place, I think, is very important because you have so many people that come to Las Vegas and then leave and then come and then leave. Teaching people about how to survive in this desert, how to operate and live in this desert, is very important, especially considering the number of people that we have coming here. And that's one of the main goals and roles of the Springs Preserve, is to sort of educate people about the natural world and the environment in this place and how you can live here sustainably and comfortably.
Yeah, the risk that the early settlers took was, okay, there's lack of water, it's hot, right?
Yeah.
They have to deal with a bunch of dust all over the place. And nowadays you kind of look at people that are generally coming here, right, leaving their community, leaving their family behind, leaving some jobs behind, and making the risk to come out here to say, okay, can I build something out there? And, that's what happened with myself is, we came out here and we're like, okay, just for 3 years, we're going to be here in Vegas. And that was almost 20 years ago and still here. And I don't see any plan going back home. Like, this is basically home now for us and for my family. And a lot of people think, oh, how can you raise your kids in Las Vegas? But the kids are doing well. The education system, like, as long as you stay on top of it, like, there are a lot of opportunities here that are good for families.
Most definitely, and you can see that once again going back into prehistory. And this is something I speak to a lot of school groups, and I think it's very important to understand that people in the past had the same thoughts, the same desires, the same needs and wants as we do today. They were no different than us. They had families they loved. They had places they loved to be. They had houses. They had foods that were their favorites too. And so they were really no different than us. It's just this sort of thin veneer of modernity and technology that we have that overlays how we live today. Strip all that away, and we are no different than anybody else.
Yeah, and Spring Preserves does a good job, I think, bringing the community together, right? Yeah. They've got this activity that we're going to be a part of out there during Halloween, the Haunted Forest, right?
Yeah, Haunted Harvest has been Haunted Harvest
has
been an incredible event for us going back. It was one of our signature events going back to the very beginning of the Springs Preserve. This fall in October, it's going to run October 23rd through 26th. Gates open at 4 o'clock. We're going to have an incredible roster of activities that we have every year. Of course, there'll be trick-or-treating, there'll be DJs, there'll be craft activities. And, we decorate the Springs Preserve. We decorate it up. So it is a special place during that time of year. And it's incredibly popular. We sell out almost every year that we do this. So I really encourage you to look forward and make your plans in advance. Ticket sales open in September. And, think ahead, because those will sell out pretty quickly. But it goes back to that idea and concept of the Springs Preserve being this gathering place for the community where everybody can meet, everybody can share their experiences and their values and have a good time doing it. Haunted Harvest is one of my favorite events that we do every year, primarily because you get to see everybody in costume. You get to see these kids coming out. And even more than that, you see the kids in costume, but then the parents come out too. And it's always a good time to see people enjoying their community, letting loose a little bit and really getting out there and getting that candy.
So I know it's some time, but you already have your costume. You know what you're going to do this year?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I haven't really thought about that yet. Of course, every year somebody tries to tell me I need to dress as Indiana Jones, and I try to push that one off a little bit. Yeah. But no, my kids, I have kids who are really super into paleontology, so they love dinosaurs, and every year they try to do some sort of dinosaur or paleontological type of outfit or costume. So we'll probably end up with something like that.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah.